class. And I apologize, I haven't actually posted the notes and assignment. I will do this tonight. I'm done with the assignment, but I haven't posted it. Hide. Let me do, okay, that's good. Today, we are gonna actually talk, oops, of course you cannot see a thing, but we will talk. Okay, now you can see. Die. I started it twice. Continue. Where is the thing? Oh, the other one died. Sorry, my Chrome died. Where are you, thingy? There you are. Okay. We are going to talk about defining our own classes, right? Java is an object-oriented program. We have actually been defining our own classes, except that we have mostly cheated, right? If you notice at the top of each one of your assignments, there was a class, right? Just that we have ignored it and not talked about it. Now we're going to talk about it, right? There is a lot more in this class in particular, and for the most part, in this lecture in particular, for the most part throughout the whole class, we'll focus a lot on the syntax, right? Which is actually the easy part. The hard part is coming up with the right classes for your problem domain, right? When you program in this class, you're trying to solve my assignment, you're trying to do what I tell you, something like that, right? In real life, you go and you have an actual problem, right? I want to, I don't know, manage inventory, or I want to manage classes, that kind of stuff, right? And so I need to start by modeling my domain. We found, although it's oftentimes abused, we found that for the most part, we tend to, when we do the analysis, we found nouns, which are our classes, right? If you're doing courses at Kennesaw, what kinds of things are you going to model?
In like the name of the courses?
Well, the name of the courses, okay.
And
What
sections, like how many sections?
Okay, you have sections, right? And sections are different than courses. What other things would you have? Classrooms. What other things would you have?
A professor name or
Well, you have professors, and what else do you have? Students, right? And so, and we'll see in a couple of more lectures, we'll talk about inheritance and how you can say, we could define professors and students as two completely separate classes, but we could also put their shared stuff into a class called person that's going to be shared by every kind of people that we are going to represent in our domain. So
student ID number, faculty ID number.
well, student ID number and faculty ID number may be basically every person has probably name, maybe a gender, maybe a date of birth, right? Regardless of whether you are student or faculty. I have no clue, depending on how you think about it, probably every person in the domain, right? As far as Kennesaw is concerned, every person has an ID number. Maybe I have no clue, I don't know. But maybe as far as Kennesaw is concerned, it's the same ID, right? They just, if you happen to be a student, you're a student. If you're a faculty, you're a faculty. We use the same number, right? So maybe they have an idea. Staff also have the same idea. I don't really know. These are the kind of stuff where you get into your particular domain and do we consider student ID and faculty ID are those two different numbers or the same number? I don't know. We go and ask the registrar or the HR people. Hey, is it the same number, right? So if it is, then we could put all that onto a personal class. Right? Name, gender, date of birth, ID number. And then we would have different things for faculty and students. For students, we may have financial information of one side, right? If you're a student, we don't care about your SSN, right? We may care about how you're paying us. If you're a faculty member, it's the other way around. We do care about your SSN. We don't necessarily care about how you're paying us. We care about how we're going to pay you. So we may have your checking account information so we can do direct deposit. And we have tax information and stuff like that. So you get to decide what's common into this common class and what goes into each one of the individuals, right? Always the hard part is that understanding the domain and modeling the domain and talking with the people who understand the domain and creating this shared vocabulary, right? In a way that's almost philosophy, right? So we do what we always do. We say, oh, that's solved, and we go talk about geeky stuff, because that's a heck of a lot easier. It's a heck of a lot easier to talk about syntax and braces and things like that than to go and understand the domain, right? So that's what we're going to do now. We're going to talk about geeky stuff and syntax. One important thing is to distinguish between the class, which is a data type, it's almost a template for the kinds of things that we're going to have, and the actual instances. So we may have a professor class, right? And I or my record would be an instance of that professor class, right? We may have a student class, and we say, okay, every student is going to have a name, an age, a gender, date of birth, so and so things, right? And each one of you would be an entity, right? Say, an instance of that class. Does that make sense? Yes? Cool. When we are programming, we normally, most of the time, we talk about the classes. And then when you are using them, then you talk about it. when you're defining the class, you talk about the class, and you don't care. I'm defining my student class. I don't care whether Joe is going to be a student or not. When I'm using that class, then I care because I'm using Joe. Does that make sense? Cool. In Java, one horrible thing is if your class is public, it has to be, or it almost has to be, your compiler and your build system may be able to do magic for you. But normally it has to be in a file with the same name as the class. And usually the package structure has to correspond to the folder structure. We have talked about packages a little bit, right? We group our classes into packages, right? And we basically have dots separating the components of our package, the folders. And so your folder structure on the file system will usually correspond to the package structure. So if your package is okaram.samples, then you need to put that into source main okaram/samples, and then go from there. Does that make sense? You can do a lot more magic with the build system in that case, but usually the file name is almost a requirement. We normally will do it that way. Eclipse will complain if you don't do it, and those kinds of things, so you will know. By the way, by convention, why do we use package names? Could we just put everything in the universe package, not use packages?
And you'd be loading stuff you don't need, I guess.
I'm not loading it if I don't use it, right? What would be the problem of having no package names? Do you think the person class for Kennesaw is the same as the person class for McDonald's? No, they probably think about people in different ways, right? They store different stuff, right? What would be the problem? Both of them would have a person class, and then you can't, right? You're going to have name collisions, and now you don't know when somebody writes person, which one do they refer to. Does that make sense? Sorry. So the package names allow us to avoid name collisions and not have to come up with really, really, really long names, right? The tradition in Java is to use a DNF name in reverse. So, like, I own the domain okaram.com, right? So I can name my things, my packages, com.okaram. whatever I want. And I know that since I own that domain, nobody else is going to name their things com.okaram.whatever. Does that make sense? You could say, okay, I'm going to name my things edu.kennesaw.yourusername.whatever. Right? And you are almost guaranteed that nobody would ever use that thing for at least 4 years, and then you leave. And your username becomes available again. So it's very common to see that convention in package names. Okay, so once said that you have to put it on the same, on a file of the same name, how do we define a class? Well, we write the keyword class, and then we put the name of the class. Then we put braces, and we put the fields or the members. This would be a super simple class, person. It has 3 fields, first name and last name, which are strings, and age, which is an int. Does that make sense? All of these fields are public, right? If I have this class right? Then I can do stuff with it. If I go here and is this closed? Let me do file. I'll eventually put it there. I have my class playing with objects. Woohoo! I can copy this and paste it here. Maybe I can. Once I do that in here, then I can do this. Does this idea make sense? Now I have a very simple class and I can do things with it. I normally like to do this. Always highlight the difference between what would this print?
Now we print, oh, okay. And now we print your first name and last name.
Why? How would it know my first name? First of all, we are only doing first name, right?
Yeah.
So it would not do the last name. But how would it know my first name?
So you enter right there.
For whom? Whose first name is Orlando?
P1,
P1's. Which one I'm printing here?
P2.
P2, which is not the same.
It's null, right?
It's actually probably the empty string. Hopefully the empty string. This selection cannot be launched. Which selection are you talking about, man? Unable to launch. Run. Run. What the heck? What is your problem, thingy? Run as? Somehow it got confused. Just a plain normal Java application. Oh, God. What's your problem? No, it's public static void main. Public static void main string.
Bracket before args.
Yeah. This is just taking one args. Itself, all right. Thank you. Now run, you thingy. It is no, actually. You're right. But it's something horrible because we didn't initialize it, right? If I was to do p1.firstName, then I would get Orlando. Does that make sense? Now, this enough is useful, right? And many times this makes just put things together into an object, right? To a record that contains several fields. And that is fairly useful by itself. Now we are going to see that we can do more magic, right? The next level of magic is defining methods. Many times we want to encapsulate our object, create our own data type, right? Not even let the outside world know about the fields, but just know about behavior. So, or sometimes we just want to augment the fields, right? You have a first name and a last name, maybe we can ask you to create your full name, right? To somehow print the full name. Does that make sense? So we could add our add a method to this. For every member, method, or field, we have to put public or private or something like that. For now, we'll put public, and then we'll talk about those things, right? So we are going to have a public method that returns what type is the full name? String, right? Now, we're going to return something. Inside a method, how can we refer to my own fields, right? One way is to do this dot. I can do this dot first name plus does this make sense? If I was to do this p1 dot last, does this make sense? Many times, especially when you're starting to program, having the keyword this is helpful, but it is not actually necessary. So we could do it like this. Does this idea make sense?
By doing that, or you still want to keep it this last name, or you can get rid of that?
I can get rid of it or keep it. It's my choice. Let me keep it just for fun. So even if you omit it, it is there. Does that make sense?
So this is sort of like a documentation or sort of just to let the person reading it know.
It's to let the person reading it know, but also sometimes you need it. Like if I declare a variable with the time, if I do this, and this guy would be printing the empty string unless I do this.
Okay. And so whatever you put dot get full name, it'll replace this with whatever's in front of the dot.
Exactly. Does this idea make sense? I would strongly recommend that you learn to read without the this. It is perfectly okay for now to always write it when you're writing code, right? Normally, we are lazy, that's why we're doing stuff with computers, right? So we don't write it. I would write it if you don't need it. Does that make sense? So make sure that you can read it without it. It is perfectly okay for the next couple of weeks to put it there. It's completely your choice. Eventually, you want to not put it because nobody else puts it, but I won't tell anybody. I will sometimes put it, sometimes not put it, just to keep you on your toes. How about and try to write one that gets you the other way around, right? Last name, comma, first name. Now, who's
Yeah.
going to volunteer?
I think you split those. Right?
Yes, come. Yeah.
Okay, I think here we just got last name first.
Yeah.
Right.
Good. Yeah.
Then return this last name.
Yeah. That if you think I'm confusing you because I did the example, just delete. You don't need the string there.
Okay.
Just return it.
Return this.
Return. What are we going to return?
Last name first.
Last name.
Last name.
Comma and a space.
Comma and space.
In there, inside that.
Okay.
String, yeah.
First name.
Yeah. Or based on first name, or right?
Yeah. That's it.
Yep. Almost. Reasonably good. Thank you.
Yeah.
You don't have to imitate me, right? I'm gonna use bad style to keep you on your toes, but you can be consistent. Then we actually need a comma here. Does this make sense? What would that be, assuming that you're in the state, and who's gonna go there? You want to volunteer. We can see to your eyes, man.
All right.
Thank you.
Okay. So do I need to do this?
No.
No.
That's, no. This dot age tells you the age of that object, right? So,
Okay.
just age.
Okay. Just age, declare it?
Just, no, not declare it. It's already declared. It's one of the fields of the object is age. Actually, don't need to declare it or do anything to it.
Okay. Age and
Wait, I don't have to ask you for the condition in that case,
Which condition?
for the age to drink alcohol.
What is the condition?
21.
21. So, we are not doing strings. What do we do? How do we know if you're old enough to drink alcohol?
if age
Greater than 20.
It's greater than 20.
greater than 21.
Go ahead, do it, go for it. Okay, go for it and then we'll play.
Okay. So if age is 21,
Return true, right?
true.
Okay. Yeah, Eclipse was trying to be helpful and inserted an extra brace. Therefore,
I have to delete one.
now just don't put it. Yeah, my kind of guy. I cannot type that. And then, that's cool.
So
Now delete the stuff at the bottom.
there we
Now
go.
we have girl cheers.
Here we go. Delete that.
Yes. Cool, thank you. Is this correct? It's close.
Oh, we're missing something.
Yes.
Hmm?
Has to be greater or equal rather than.
Oh yeah, greater than or equal. Yep. Okay.
Thank you. We can also just do,
Instead of return true, can you just add that, basically like, okay, you are old enough to drink alcohol as a return?
right? Same difference. We don't need the if statement. Now, sorry, what were you saying?
No, that's.
It is different from printing. We are not printing anything. We are returning it to our caller, and then our caller may decide to print stuff, right?
Is that what you would see in the industry? You would see it written like that and not with a
Yes.
statement?
Yeah. With an if statement, that would pinpoint you as a newbie, which is perfectly okay. You are a newbie. That's why you are here, right? It's just something that you would throw out. But right now, it's perfectly okay. It still works, right? So it's not a big deal. Sometimes when you get complicated things or something like that, it may be easier to understand that way. But
Could we not also define a function and then pass person through that?
We could, right? And then we would call it differently, right? So we could do public static we would need to pass a person. The difference would be that one would be called as P1 dot is old enough to drink alcohol. Drink. Sorry. And the other one would be
So is it just kind of like a standard that everyone calls it
well,
the first way?
yes and no. This is philosophy. There's a practical thing. We will see. We have been using everything public. So the person class is leaving itself open to all sorts of things. It is fairly common to make the actual variables private, and then only methods can access them.
Okay.
So that would be one reason to do it. The other one is philosophy. Who should know? Should a person know whether it's old enough to drink or not? Or should somebody outside, who is defining that thing? Does it belong to the person class, or does it belong outside?
Okay.
And that's kind of the philosophy part. I'm coming up with examples, so it belongs inside, because in this lecture we're talking about methods, right?
Yeah.
But yes, you could put it outside. You get into once you get into a couple hundred classes, right, where each class may have 5 or 10 or 20 fields and then 5 or 10 or 20 methods, it actually becomes important.
Yeah.
Right? If it's one, it doesn't matter. If it's like, should this be inside the class, right? Or should this be some other utility class that decides? Should a person know? Should a person know whether it's old enough to drink, or should somebody else outside, right? Who is the decider? Where would the knowledge of whether a person is old enough to drink go? Should it go on the person class, or should it go somewhere else? Should it go into an age validator class? I don't know. It depends.
It's always confused me, I guess, is what do you call it? The dot. But I guess I've always, if it's inside, you would call it the second.
It depends, right? If it's a method, this guy, you have to call it with the dot. This guy, you have to call it without the dot. There are two different guys. They happen to have the same name, but they're two different things. So one is called like this, and the other one is called like this. Does that idea make sense? In fact, your assignment, you have to do some this way, some the other. Just for fun. Okay, this is cool, right? You understand how to define methods? Any questions about these pieces? No, nobody? Cool. Let's talk about something interesting. What's happening when I do this new thing, right? Many times I want, what's a problem here? This may not make sense what would happen when I call this? What would I get? Who knows? I never initialized the age. Does that make sense? I mean, we know. We can eventually find out what it is, right? Probably get false because it's 0, but we don't really know, right? So one thing we can do is allow for constructors. And constructors force you to build an object when you create it. Does that make sense? So I can define a constructor. A constructor looks like a function, like a method, with two differences. One, it doesn't have a return type because it doesn't return anything, right? It just builds the object. Second, it has the same name as the class, which is slightly dumb, but it works. So in this case, what would be our constructor? We can this is one way to do it. And what do I do? That's my constructor. I'm being given those things. What do I do with them? I still have to store them in my variables. Does that make sense?
Good question.
Yes.
Why the P before first name?
Well, here's the, one sec. This is, what would happen if I just call it first name? What's, sorry? What's the problem? Oops. What's the problem with just calling it first name without the P? Does this first name refers to the parameter or to the variable from the object?
Variable.
Good. That was a very.
Which one? This one?
Yeah.
How about this one? So how can I refer to the parameter? It actually, this refers to the parameter because it doesn't have the this dot, but it's confusing as hell, especially in the beginning. So by doing this, right, it's my name. I can call it whatever the heck I want, right? This allows me to distinguish. It's just, we could come up with just different things. I'm going to call it FN, right? It is okay. I tend to do one of two things. Either use the P underscore just for parameter, and that way I distinguish between the parameter and the instance variable. Or actually, if you know how it works, then you can just use first name and remember that the one without the this is the parameter. But especially for an intro class, I tend to put the P's because it's a lot less confusing, right? Now, there is a cool thing. I used to have I used to be able to do this. Now I cannot do that anymore. Because I don't have a constructor that takes no arguments anymore. Does that make sense? If you don't define any constructors at all, then Java will define one that takes no arguments and does nothing. As soon as you define one, then you don't get any constructor. other than the ones you define. Does that idea make sense? So by doing this, we force people to give us a first name, a last name, and an age. Does that idea make sense? So constructors are cool. I don't know if we have talked about this, but in Java you could have methods with the same name but different arguments. So we arbitrarily choose an age. If you don't tell me what your age is, I'm making you 18. It's my universe. Everybody is 18 by default. Does that make sense? And that would allow me now, still I cannot do this, right? I can do this. Or just like this. And I'm 18 again. Woohoo! Wouldn't that be cool? No, not really. But no.
Set up a constructor along with those that doesn't take any arguments and just says name and.
You could, and set up whatever you want.
Oh.
Yes, absolutely. Does this idea make sense? Now, once you have constructors, it is fairly common to make these things private. And give the outside world accessors. What's the advantage of this? Well, once I make something private, only I can access it. It's private, it's mine, nobody else can access it. Why would I do that? There are two reasons. One is really good, the other one is not that good, but we still do it. One is by convention. It is officially bad manners to make good things public. You should always do this. I don't buy it, I don't believe it, but many people do. The important reason is encapsulation. In many cases, not in something like this, right? But when you get into complicated things, you don't want to provide extra details, because once you provide those extra details, then you have to maintain them forever. Does that make sense? I could decide that maybe I'm doing an embedded system where memory is very important, and I don't actually want to keep that first name and last name. Maybe I want to keep them encrypted, or maybe I want to keep them compressed. Maybe I don't want to keep them in ASCII because memories are a premium. So I want to, and we have 26 letters, right? There's no reason to use 8 bits for them. I could use maybe, 6, maybe even 5, right? 5 would give me 32. If I don't do upper versus lowercase, I can do 5 letters, 5 bits, right? So I can save almost half. If memory is really important, I could want to do that, right? If I give you string first name and I make it public, then I can never do that. If I give you get first name, then I could store it in 5 bits and create that string on the fly when you call it. Does that make sense? For something like a person class, am I ever gonna do that? No. But for something that may be complicated, probably. And so as a kind of self-defense mechanism, right? Many people do it all the time. Doing it all the time is done over there, probably okay, right? The other thing is also, if you make it public, you are giving people read and write access. They can go change your variable. Is that okay? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. For a personal class like this, do I care? No, in fact, I'll probably give them a set first name and a set last name, right? But for other things, maybe it's not what I want. Does that idea make sense? It is very important that you guys learn how to do it, right? So I will probably bug you to make all your things private in this class. Not because you always ought to make them private, but because drop and give me 20. Because I want you guys to get the practice. Probably a reasonable thing when you're starting to always make them private and create these accessories, right? And we could also create the corresponding setters, the modifiers. Public void set first name. Does this make sense?
Yeah.
And the other two, which I'm not doing. They're left as an exercise for the reader, meaning you guys. Does that idea make sense? Actually, I should. Never mind. Start changing these things, right? Oh, and actually, this is a difference, right? This function is old enough, doesn't belong to the person class, so they cannot access the age field because now the age field is private. This other method belongs to the age class, so it can still access fields directly. That is the kind of the practical difference in methods versus functions, which we had mentioned, but now we have it as an example. Since we weren't accessing our fields directly anywhere else, we don't need to change our code, right? So that's why, in a way, you always do the accessors. It is always, Java has this convention that all your accessors are get this, get that. It is very important that when you are setting something on a method, you call them set or change or something else, right? Because normally I expect that when I call the object, call methods on the object probably shouldn't change. If you're changing it, you better tell me in big bold letters, you're changing the object when you call. Does that idea make sense? Just like if your function actually changes the parameters, you probably want to say something in big bold letters. Is this cool? I think we have killed this example. Methods, constructors, access modifiers, get and search. Yeah. Let's do something else.
So if someone were using your class and say something, you had an error and someone let you know that maybe age was returning like a string or something, you could go and change the class and then no one else would have to change their code.
Exactly,
I guess.
exactly. Whereas if I let them see the field, then I basically have to keep that field forever. So imagine that I'm doing this, right? And I say, okay, let me do this. I'm gonna do first name, last name, and age. Why did I do first name, last name, and age? Because it's convenient, right? Is it a good idea to store anybody's age? Do you see a problem? Do you see a problem storing anybody's first name?
No, because it changes.
Yes, it changes, right? It actually changes every day, right? If I just know your age, you are 35 now, I have no clue when would you turn 36, right? So age is actually a really dumb thing to store, right? What do I want to store?
Birthday.
Birthday, right?
Okay.
So that would be a standard example, right? If I don't, right, let you, if I never have an int age field, right? Oh, I only have get age, then I can start asking you to give me the birth date and I calculate the age on the fly. I didn't do it because actually dates are a pain in the neck and freaking Java doesn't have easy, simple dates. Which you saw the assignment 5.
Yeah.
I was trying to get. Dates are actually painful, incredibly painful. What date is today?
14. Yeah, 14.
Where?
Oh.
Right here, right now, right? It changes. It actually changes over the range of the Earth, right? At some point in time, it's probably a day more, maybe a day less. I have no clue. Maybe both. And then you have all the cultural things, right? We follow the Gregorian calendar, right? Not everybody does. Most of the world now does, but there's a bunch of other calendars. We just choose an arbitrary point in time to start counting, right? Most people tend to have years that are around 365 days because that's important because it's the sun and the seasons and things like that. Some cultures use lunar calendars, which actually makes sense because it's 4 weeks. It's 28 days rather than other weird stuff. That's why Easter and some things fall differently in the year because they move with lunar calendar. Different countries may have different calendars. You also get, if you go back in time, at some point in time, we moved from the Julian to the Gregorian calendar. So we moved the day 12 days, 13 days, something like that. And so you need to know that for Europe, or most of Western Europe, I don't know, the dates from December 1st to December 13th of 1825 never existed. We just skipped those days. I just invented the dates. I don't remember which ones are the dates, right? We just skipped those days. And actually, it is much more painful because different countries skip those dates at different times. So like the Russians didn't skip those dates the same time as we did. They just skipped 20 years later or something like that. So dates are a horrible, horrible mess. Which we normally avoid by just saying, I don't give a hoot. I'm just using the date from here. Let's go, right? But actually dates are a mess. And Java doesn't have simple dates that are not a mess. They did it the right way, but the right way is complicated as hell, just because you have to specify a calendar and things like that. Just wanted to do day, month, year. They don't have that stuff.
Is it based off of seconds from like 1973 or something like that?
Stored on the computer, yeah, we used to do seconds since 1970, maybe 1980. 1970. And that's what we tend to, that's how it's stored on the computer, usually. And sometimes you actually store date, month, year, those kinds of things.
It's, I mean, it may be a little bit off topic, but I remember like going over that a little bit before, and I wonder, like, is there a computer somewhere that's still counting the seconds since the time when they started it, or how does our computer know?
Most of the time, your computer keeps a counter, right? And it increments every millisecond or something like that.
Even when it's off, I guess.
Maybe there used to be batteries on the BIOS just to keep the dates. Nowadays, normally your computer boots and goes talks to a server and says, what time is it?
Okay.
The server responds.
As long as the servers keep it.
As long as the servers keeping it, yeah. Usually you have 5 servers, so if this guy is not there, yes. Now I don't know if they probably still have batteries, but I haven't cared. I haven't cared in ages. They used to have batteries, and it used to be a pain when your battery ran out, because then your computer wouldn't boot, and you'd have to go change the battery, which many times involved soldering. And I grew up in a very warm and humid place, and so batteries would leak and become. So you had to be. And computers were a really expensive thing, so if your battery leaked, then you had to go clean that horrible stuff and pray that nothing got actually broken, which happened a couple of times.
So I guess in theory, like if some of these like horror movies happen, where like if all computers were to shut down, we would lose.
We would lose track of time. On the other hand, we probably wouldn't terribly care.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, we need to keep track of time in a way. It's relative to our past for history, but as far as history is concerned, we don't terribly mind whether it's a day off, right? I mean, if you're Christian or if you're culturally Christian, we celebrate Christmas and that stuff, right? And somebody assigned and said, oh, December 25th sounds like a good day, right? It's not as if we actually know when Christ was born, right? It's just, yeah, right? And the world continues to revolve. Nothing terrible happens, right? So it wouldn't be terrible if we lose a few days, right? I mean, you need to sort of synchronize again and say, okay, I kind of want to know when the next year is, because that means seasons and that means planting and eating, right? So that's important. But it doesn't terribly matter if we lose a few years or if we lose a few days. It's not a big deal. Unless we all want to keep synchronized. Yes, if we're communicating with satellites, if we're doing GPS, then we want to keep very accurate time. But if all hell breaks loose, then, I mean, time is going to be the least of your problems. Trying to find food, then time is not. So do something else. We have 8 full minutes. Woohoo! Do you guys remember complex numbers? No. Do you guys remember fractions? So let's create a class fraction. we were to represent a fraction, what would we need? How do we represent a fraction?
Into numbers.
Okay, what are the names of those numbers? Int what?
Int.
What? What do we call those things?
Numerator.
And
Denominator.
Denominator.
yeah, good. I was about to send people back to elementary school. So we could, of course, what do we do here? What do we return?
Numerator.
It'd probably be nice to have a constructor, right?
You don't just have the one constructor up top for the entire class?
I could define more, but I haven't defined any constructors here for this class.
Oh, yeah, gotcha.
I'm doing weird stuff by defining several classes in the same file.
Right.
It is okay as long as you don't make them public.
Okay.
We could do this, right? We could do maybe if, or maybe after. The other way around. Just in case. Not divide by 0. Does it make sense? If you send me 0 as the denominator, then I'm gonna say that I'm 0 over 1. Does it make sense? How about toString? Do we convert a fraction to a string?
The int to string.
Well, we can do that, but let's see if this would work. Maybe it will work. Maybe it will complain. So we could do stuff like Yay! Java did magic and converted things to strings, which doesn't always happen. But isn't this cool?
Normally you would have called the toString method, right?
No, like inside the toString, it knew that this plus was addition of that was concatenation of strings rather than addition, and so that it had to call toString on this guy and toString on this guy to make them do the right thing. Other operations with fractions are left as exercises to the reader. Any questions? I will post the assignment tonight, but also, as with everything else, right? How are you going to get proficient at this?
Practice.
Practice. Do 100. Come up with other things. Create a class for courses. Create a class for chairs. Create a class for clothing. Create a class for whatever, right? You are also now getting the next class when we talk about arrays. It's probably going to make you a lot more dangerous. But now you're getting to the point where you can start doing at least mildly useful stuff, right? Maybe this is not, you cannot do the most useful programs, but do you have anything that bothers you? Do you have anything that you want to automate, right? Write a program to do something useful for you as opposed to assignments, which are useful in that they get your grade, but so play as much as you can. Other than that, I'll see you guys on Monday. By the way, you are doing the new thingy, right? The new way for, are you doing
What is it?
the, or do I have you confused? The code review. With a couple of you guys, I started a different way of sending assignments. And I actually get to do code review. Of course I didn't because you sent me yours yesterday night. No, I didn't have a chance. But I'm going to leave one, and so I can do more detailed. I can do like line by line and leave a comment on each one of the lines of your code as opposed to just give you a grade and a kind of overview. So if anybody else is interested, let me know. And we can do that.
Fighting with it last night. I was like, I don't know how to use it.
It seems that you got it.
At the last minute, I was gonna try to send it Thursday, and then when I looked on it, it's like, oh, it never got there.
Yeah.
How do I send it?
I got the thing on my phone, but I was too lazy to actually go look at it.
That was my fault. I'm sorry.
No, it's cool. But normally I can, if you want to do it that way, let me know and I'll set it up. That way you can get better feedback or more detailed feedback.
I can do it. Is it? Do you have to upload it to somewhere other than Bitbucket?
I am uploading it. What I'm doing is I upload it to Bitbucket. I create a repo for you. I upload it, and then you download from my repo, and you send a pull request.
Okay, yeah.
And then I can comment. Would you mind me showing your assignment?
Go ahead. I think there's some errors there. I'm pretty sure there are.
I didn't run it, but it seemed reasonably okay. I mean, I just read it on my phone. Yeah. Like basically what happens is there will be a pull request. Actually, there's no pull request.
Oh, of course not. What am I doing wrong?
You did the branch, you just didn't do the pull request. You have the branch. you forgot to, you haven't done the pull request. If you go to this place, actually when you committed, it should have told you, but if you just come to bitbucket.org/ocaram2/CS5K Lakia Whitfield, you should be able to log in. And then you should be able to send a pull request. I can merge, but you can probably do create pull request. But basically, this would let me do things like, no, I need to get it. If she sends a pull request, I could comment individual lines of your code, and so this would let me do kind of style comments as opposed to just it works or it doesn't. If anybody's interested, let me know and I'll do this stuff. And I will see you guys eventually. Monday.
Yeah, spring break is weird. It's first week of April or something.